Hello, everyone. This is David Leibowitz with Floshspiel Video Game Philosophy, and we are. I'm back again with Mr. Amazing to discuss. Last time he is our proud Hegelian here, and we discussed Fallout New Vegas. Now I know a lot of you love Guilty Gear on this channel. It's the most popular thing, so I felt like, especially maybe possibly things that are going on in the world right now, it might be relevant if we get there, but Guilty Gear has some deep philosophical stuff that's not related to the music, which I will definitely delve into in my video essay on Rosicrucianism, and I think some of that will be brought out today. But how about for people, probably most people watching this have not seen the Hegel thing, so tell us, introduce yourself again, Mr. Amazing.
Yeah, hello all. My name is Mr. Amazing. Shae, to those of us who know me in the real world. I've been on YouTube for about 6 or 7 years, on and off. I'm on another hiatus, working on several different projects. I'm working on a main one right now that is going into Y. Again, I've been on such a hiatus, working on another one that's about Plato and his contribution to origins of West as a concept, coherent or otherwise. That's what I'm doing right now, and happy to be here.
All right. All right. Without further ado, you've not probably seen any of this before, right?
No.
All right. This first scene is going to be in Japanese. The rest will be in English. This Guilty Gear XR Revelator did not get an English dub, but the game afterward did, and the game before did.
Okay.
But this specific game did not get a dub, and so.
Okay.
But this character, that man, is going to show up again. Probably if we show, he goes by Asuka when he reveals himself. But let's watch. All right.
かつてまだこの世界に魔法がなかった時代、一人の賢者が異世界バックヤードを発見した。バックヤードは神羅万象を司り、この世の真理を知ることも世界を思いのままに作り変えることもできる場所だった。賢者はその場所から一つの夢が叶うと考えた。それは人類の幸福、それが永遠に続くことである。賢者はその方法を探るため一体のロボットを作った。与えられた使命は人類の揺らぐことのない幸福、その方法を探すこと。またいかなる結論を出したとしても人間を傷つけないこと。この使命に従いロボットは膨大な学習を始めた。しかしある時一つの疑問にぶつかってしまった。人間とは何であるか。学習を重ねるたび人間が複雑な存在だと知ったロボットは完全に定義することを諦め、結論を得ないまま自ら解釈を作り出した。人間には魂がある。それは漠然としながらもロボットが唯一納得できる答えだった。そしてある日、長い時を経てついにロボットは未来を予測し終えた。意外な結末を。その結末とは人類が文明の発達とともにやがて自らの意志、その選択の自由を失う未来だった。人は夢を見る。人は意志を重んじる。人は愛を持つ。それらの人間的な衝動を魂と仮定したにもかかわらず、人間は将来的にそれを失うと予測した。自らの使命は未来永劫続く人間の幸福を探すこと。しかし人は 永遠に人ではいられない。その上でロボットが使命を完遂するには一つの結論を出さざるを得なかった。この世界にまだ人間はいない。この日を境に彼の目的は魂を持つ者、不変の衝動を司る真の人類を作ることになった。そして同時に現人類は守るべき対象ではなくなった。
So, pretty deep
Yeah.
stuff. What'd you say?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. What's the back? Like, is this the background to the whole of the series or the game itself?
Very, very, very much. I mean, this
Eh.
is that's the universal will. So that thing is what is that robot is the universal will.
So I'm not quite following what's going on here. Then is this like a metaphor? And
no, this all happened. This all actually happened in this series. Everything happened. It's not a metaphor.
so what? So what does it strive to create then? That it turns
it just
human?
strives to kill. It just strives to kill all people because they're not because they it just strives to kill all people because humans aren't truly happy yet.
Well, I guess I'm interested in how you draw this connection between the robot and the universal will, because I mean, I see this more as kind of like a demiurgic kind of character, and the demiurge is not necessarily the will in any Gnostic scheme, or even in Plato's account. So I'm interested in where you get the idea of the will from.
I'm not saying it's not my idea. It's what it's referred to as. That's what it's actually called.
The robot itself.
It's called.
Was that mentioned here?
It is not mentioned here, but it is it is referred to as the universal will in the series.
Interesting. I mean, personally, I don't quite see that connection immediately. I mean, there's a sense in which drive itself, impulse, insofar as it's the robot's own impulse, that has its a kind of connection to what Freud calls the death drive, and so that, or a thanatos.
Thanatos,
yeah, that's evident in all life, and so then there is a will to death, so to say, but to call that the universal will is, I think, something of a misnomer, because the universal will is simultaneously a will to life and a will to death that are persistently in conflict. So I think that's a very interesting name for this. Again, I see it as more of a demiurge-like character than anything else.
I mean, it is very much a demiurge character, yes. And but I guess just how about take aside what it is before. I guess I can layer in what the story is, but just on its own, this concept, because it's a fascinating concept on its own. Just stripped even from the plot of the series. Just you as a person that doesn't know the story of the series at all. What do you think of it?
I think it's very fascinating. I think the use of a robot is interesting, and the idea that it's a philosopher that creates this immediately invokes a kind of alchemical allusion to the philosopher's stone, and then it begs the question, is this a robot, or is this something that's been imbued with some sort of life force, similar to in medieval Judaism, the idea of a golem. It's very similar to this as well, especially in the protective sense. And so then, is this philosophy, or is this something more magical or alchemical that's at work?
You put the nail on the head. This is in fact more of a magical science being. It's a magical being, yes.
Right. So that's the impulse I get.
Yes, because Asuka, because I'm trying to think about this video about have you ever heard of Rosicrucianism? You have.
Yeah, of course. It's an offshoot of early modern Hermeticism.
Yes.
Christian Rosencrantz and the Chemical Wedding.
You do know. So I guess we might as well. I guess we could get to a little bit of what that is. I don't think this is going to discount the video that I'm going to make on it myself, But I was thinking that this meeting might get us at least somewhere closer to this. So yeah, I mean there is some Hegel I think that's sprinkled in to the Rosicrucianism.
Oh yes, and I mean Hegel read Rosicrucian literature. He famously refers to, I forget exactly what it is, but he uses this phrase, "the rose and the cross of the present." That's in one of the prefaces to one of his texts. So he was absolutely familiar with Rosicrucian ideas.
So basically we're dealing. So basically, there's a character by the name of Asuka R. Kreutz who wrote R.
Mm.
Kreutz is a reference to Christian Rosenkreutz. Christian
Yep.
Rosenkreutz. And he basically how about I share my screen? Born sometime in the 20th century, that I think this is also I think this is specifically good for our audience rather than just it's good for our audience. Born sometime in the 20th century, that man experienced the dawn of revival firsthand. At some point, he became a disciple to the original, one of the five closest to him. Not long after Cronus and the others formed the conclave, the original returned to the backyard in order to stop the universal will's rampage. In the process, he retrieved the seeds of the absolute world and entrusted both items to that man. The five disciples would await the original's return, but began searching for a way to stop the universal will on their own. That man, at odds with the other four, chose to educate the people and help them evolve. A gifted prodigy, that man completed biology studies in his youth and played a part in the completion of the theory of magical science. Specializing in the field of bioinformatics, he met Frederick Balsara and Aria Hale in college, who become his best friends. In 2014, that man was transferred to the Ecosystem Evolution Project to spearhead applied magical research. Under his former professor, Professor Vincent McDonald, that man would often discuss philosophy with Frederick. In 2015, presumably succeeding Vince as the project's director at this point, that man completed the gear cell theory, managing to stabilize the cells infused with magic. Afraid of the weaponization, that man turned his research to the state under four conditions. Following a successful negotiation, it was renamed the Geared Project in 2016, yet the military soon intervened, forced to work for them. That man resisted the way he could. He convinced the terminally ill Arya to cryo-sleep and planted one of the seeds in Frederick, restructuring him into a gear, gambling for his friend to survive. When confronted about it, that man lied to Frederick and left him for dead. As apparent betrayal, Frederick swore revenge. Months later, that man went missing, causing all projects to be frozen and all related data to be classified. So that's the background to the whole series.
Huh. Yeah, no, it's very interesting. So this
magic.
who is this guy? That man.
So that man is Asuka R. Kreutz.
I see.
His name is revealed, I think, at the end of XR Revelator 2, but he starts going by it like normally in Strive, the recent game.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, I mean it's very interesting. So he's trying to, so to say, uncover the hidden rules behind the working of the universal will.
Yes. He's rebelling against the universal will, but fundamentally, there's something about him that's still connected to the universal will, even if he's trying to fight it, because the original is the one that made the universal will.
Right. Right, and I mean there again there is this kind of Platonic, Gnostic, I think, structure to this even naming scheme in all of these early, late antique systems of philosophy and cosmology. There is a process of what's called emanation, where the original in this language, or in Plato's scheme, it's the good. In Plotinus' scheme, it's the one. In Valentinus, who was a 2nd century Gnostic, it's the deep, or the profound. This gives rise to, in Plato's scheme, a dyad. In Plotinus' scheme, universal mind. And then in, I think in Valentinus' scheme, it's Sophia, or wisdom.
Yes.
And then this gives rise to a third, until eventually, especially in the Gnostic scheme, you have a culmination in man, in anthropos. But so there's a sense in which there's a gradual descent of each of these in a kind of causative chain in which the last in the chain proceeds from the first. So I think that's definitely what's being gotten at here in a kind of roundabout way. Will, though, is a Christian idea, and so there's a kind of departure there. Like Plato and Aristotle, for instance, have no conception of the will. This is one of St. Paul's fantastic innovations to which the history of Western consciousness is forever indebted.
All right. I guess, what do you think about, and I will say that all magic is fundamentally created from information. So in my video, I'm trying to connect Rosicrucianism to information theory. That's what I'm trying to get to. If there's a connection between the two. Do you see a connection between the two?
I mean, in Rosicrucianism itself, from what I know, which isn't very much, it's just a kind of further mystification and dramatization of alchemical theory. And alchemical theory is just an early modern theory of transformation and change. Chemistry. Now, as far as information goes, chemistry, of course, depends upon, we know today, the information contained in an atom and the way it interacts and ionizes other atoms and such. So I don't know. There's maybe a roundabout connection there, but a direct one, I'm not really sure of. I'm very interested in what you're getting at, though.
So I think you can say that for when I formulate my ideas more clearly. I do have a connection, but I believe there's a connection between them. But I think we'll say that for now. But for now, we might as well meet this guy for first and see what his deal is. What his deal is now, because basically he's very sad about everything he did.
Right?
Yeah.
Time. He lives up to his nickname. People call him the king of groundwork.
They do. Than a devil. So why risk a lifetime of imprisonment by showing up here? I must admit, it has us curious.
That's certainly fair. I'm here because I have a request for all of you.
A request?
That's right. Though having this conversation may bring us rushing to our main point of order, is that all right with everyone? The Tome of Origin. As the name would imply, everything sprang forth from its pages. This book makes anything possible. It granted magic to mankind, crafted our future, and with it, the risk of our downfall. The tome itself, however, has no will. It provides what is asked of it, urging caution as it complies. Of course, its power is too great for mankind to wield. Under my authority as its current owner, I intend to dispose of the tome.
We obviously understand the dangers the tome poses. But is such an extreme measure necessary? Could we not conceal or protect it?
Perhaps, if not for those who would desire and seek it.
The tome has such tremendous potential. It could help us build a better future. You would toss aside its value as well as its danger.
Value. What value could it hold that we currently lack? For example, what value does this $10 bill hold?
You could treat yourself to a little something.
Well, to the extremely rich, it's hardly worth the paper it's printed on.
On the other hand, in the country of Valyupia, this one bill could feed an entire family for 3 months. Value changes based on where you stand. Before we seek out an uncertain future, we must attend to things in the present.
Well, aren't you a romantic? Is this meant to be your atonement?
No, my venture. My final venture as a scientist. And so begins at long last my world peace experiment.
Wait.
So his design, he does look like he looks like a religious figure, right?
Yeah, I mean, even the cross has itself a rose on it. That is the cross around his neck.
Yes, and especially the cross on his eye.
Right.
So, but what do you think? What do you think about the philosophy of around abandoning all the progress that we've made?
I think it's
That's technology, right? I mean, or magic in the sense is the replacement of technology, but it's the same thing, right?
right. I mean, I think it's interesting. I always find these kinds of pieces of media interesting in which it's the same present we have now, except with this kind of added information, in this case, a magical text that has these extraordinary powers. But like in the previous scene, you could see an American flag, so clearly history has progressed in such a way that
America exists in this universe.
yeah, no, I think that's fascinating that the developments of this alternate universe uh, simultaneously were enabled to happen, and yet probably happened according to a different path because of these other powers that exist in the world. So that in this context, it then begs the question: well, what was it in this world that enabled the present that we have that's akin to our own? And if this text is destroyed, how would that have a ripple effect in a way that it would not have in our world? So how would it append the present of this world in ways that would not our own? Because of course we don't have those powers. So I think that's quite interesting.
What would be the closest thing to a tome of origin for for technology?
I mean, it is so hard to say. I mean, the closest thing we really have in terms of its causative effects is an immaterial object, and that's the collective belief in the market, I would say. And that's a kind of social technology because you've gotten a bunch of people to agree on a set of norms, rules, and procedures for exchanging things about which the whole of human life turns, from the very recording of this sound and its purchase vis-a-vis a microphone to the infrastructure whereby it is delivered and maintained, that is Discord as a service that has money donated to it, to the electrical and audio infrastructure that's maintained by thousands and thousands and thousands more people. I mean, all of this, if you get rid of the belief that norms and rules and procedures can maintain this vast organized collective network of human action, then you have a ripple effect that is just as profound as would be this physical object, I would say. Now, as for technology, I called that a social technology, and in fact it is, because it's something that we came up with and convinced ourselves of so as to coordinate and maximize the coordination of human action. And so that technology, techne, as skilled artifice, that's from the Greek, that's exactly what we're talking about here. It's not a material technology, but an immaterial one, a practical one.
Mm. Would you, I guess, is there anything more about that scene, or would you like to see a little bit more of this guy talk?
I mean, just as a vague, musing, it's very reminiscent to Death Note.
In a sense of what?
A guy with a book
I mean,
who
yeah.
has control over his hand and thumb on major government powers.
Yeah.
My greatest mistake was robbing Frederick and Arya of the time they could have spent together. However, now no one will rely on you as a weapon, nor as a hero. I should have done this 100 years ago. Mr. President, sole bad guy, the hero, has perished. This is Frederick Bulsara, an ordinary man.
And you wanted the whole world to acknowledge that.
Shit. Nobody told me there'd be an encore performance.
You really do need to get better at expressing yourself. No. Asuka, let me ask you something. Is this your accumulation of goodwill?
Where did you hear that phrase?
From Eno.
No, that's something else altogether. Promise you won't laugh?
Only if it's funnier than your space vacation idea.
Radio. I wanted a radio show.
Sorry, what?
People want the most beautiful fruit, so we spend our lives looking above us. We fail to notice that our baskets are full, and that fruit is falling to the ground and bruising. The people who have realized this have tried finding ways to help. Both the Conclave and Ariels were searching for something. And in their search, they created opposition and conflict. We often misunderstand each other's feelings. We don't always agree. But we can't reject the other's entirety. What we lack is accurate knowledge.
Accurate knowledge?
68,502,011 children, all under 14 years old, are being used for labor at this very moment. Orphans, slums, massacres, diseases, child soldiers, war. In the places we can see from up here in the sky, and across the borders we can only see on the map. Every day, people continue to be born. The Tome teaches about the nature of our world. What we need is not a call to action, but numbers. Just numbers, free from ideology, profit, and value. Clear numbers. The Tome grants the right to knowledge, and I simply observe those numbers. In the hopes that one day, I can call them the accumulation of goodwill.
Is that what you meant? By creating world peace?
Doesn't exactly sound like it's gonna top the charts.
What do you think?
So I couldn't quite follow what he was saying with how the tome relates to numbers. Is it just that the tome itself contains the information?
I don't fully know either. And I'm starting to realize if he actually wants to dispose the tome, or if he actually wants to just hog the tome to himself while he's in space. Which is what it's also kind of seems like it might be.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like destruction to me. And it's also not clear what exactly he wants to do with this information. I understand that his end goal is peace, but I don't understand how this number relates to the accumulation of goodwill. It's not quite linear, his thought process, that is.
I don't understand it either, but I guess, I mean, it sounds like he wants, is there anything about, I guess, just his call to action, though?
Yeah, it's just very strange. I mean, could you replay it, actually?
Sure.
Because I kind of
Sure.
feel like I'm just missing it.
I don't know if you're missing anything. I can replay it, but
both the Conclave and Ariels.
So
were searching for
so
something.
Ariels is a form that the Universal Will took. So I will give you that. There's something. So this is sort of, I guess, saying, okay, the Universal Will wanted to create world peace this way by killing everyone, or something.
Okay.
And in their search, they created opposition and conflict. We often misunderstand each other's feelings. We don't always agree. But we can't reject the other's entirety. What we lack is accurate knowledge.
Accurate knowledge?
68,502,011 children, all under 14 years old, are being used for labor at this very moment. Orphans, slums, massacres, diseases, child soldiers, war. In the places we can see from up here in the sky, and across the borders we can only see on the map. Every day, people continue to be born. The Tome teaches about the nature of our world. What we need is not a call to action, but numbers. Just numbers, free from ideology, profit, and value. Clear numbers. The Tome grants the right to knowledge, and I simply observe those numbers.
So I thought the numbers were just a bunch of people that were free from ideology and value.
I guess he just wants data. That seems to be all he's saying. That we just need the data.
Which, I don't know. I guess this guy is also originally was like I don't know if you're supposed to agree with him. I mean, the guy says at the end it's not going to top the charts. Like, I don't think people are going to like that.
Right.
So I guess what do you think about that?
You just play yet. I want to see. I want to catch what he says he's going to do with the numbers.
In the hopes that one day, I can call them the accumulation of goodwill.
Is that what you meant? By creating world peace?
Doesn't exactly sound like it's gonna top the charts.
That's where the scene ends.
That's interesting. I guess he just wants knowledge. That's very strange.
So, what does that? So I guess, what does that mean? Or do you?
Well, I mean, it seems he thinks that once a certain degree of knowledge has been attained, then, at least from his standpoint, peace has been achieved because the whole of the human condition has been circumscribed numerically, which I suppose is a goal of people alive today in the real world, but it's a kind of very empty description of peace, empty description of goodwill. I mean, just because you know something doesn't really mean anything's been done about it. It's a kind of spectator theory of peace and goodwill. It's not active, it's totally passive.
Let me add something about. I guess do you want to about I think what the actual story says world peace is, or?
Sure.
All right.
What is peace? Some people know. Everyone wants an answer to that question. Why? It's simple. Because no one's ever seen it before. Even if there's no misery before our eyes, we know that it's out there, somewhere. There are hills and valleys. But that doesn't mean we should flatten it all out. Mechanisms that simply prevent inequality take sin away from mankind. We belong neither in the wilderness nor shut in buildings. We belong somewhere peaceful. Peace comes to be when people forgive each other's sins. When all sin vanishes from the world. That's when peace will vanish too. And the gears that give mankind meaning will stop turning. Is peace just a dream, then? It's not that simple. Just as every human face is different, so too are the worlds we all dream of. Some people are just incompatible. But if there's one thing I know for sure, there's no need to aim for a perfect world. As long as you keep trying, that world will eventually come to you. What matters is that before that happens, you know the meaning of your life.
It's interesting. It's a very kind of a subjective view of really anything whatsoever, which isn't bad, but I do think it certainly demotivates any kind of action in the world in any way.
I agree too. I'm not. I don't know if I mean, this is hardcore Nietzsche, I'd say. Isn't this?
Yes. I mean, it is and it isn't. The idea of the last man also does imply a certain social status and social condition.
Mm-hmm.
And the overman is someone who overcomes that social position, and it's someone who is not just thinking of the meaning of their own life in a vacuum, but very distinctly in opposition to a world that has really fallen away from any organized meaning, or in an opposite sense, has so totally fallen into slave Christian morality that it's come into a kind of hypertrophy of meaning. There's too much meaning that's kind of squished any kind of vitality out of the human activity.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is kind of a bit more vacuous in a way. I don't know. Is the guy's name supposed to be ironic? Like, what's his role? Is he actually a bad guy?
No, he was called a bad guy, but he's obviously he's an anti-hero. I mean, he's just an edgy anti. I mean his actual name again is Frederick Balsara. That's his. He was just labeled bad guy, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's. I mean, it certainly gives more meaning to what is being said at the end by Asuka. Their name is.
No, the guy at the end. No, this one is Frederick or Sol.
No, but like, what was the guy in the previous scene?
Asuka.
Yeah, that was Asuka. Yeah, it certainly gives more meaning to that because, with this context in mind, yeah, having numbers can constitute peace. Because if numbers give Asuka meaning, then sure, that's a kind of the peace derived from that subjective meaning.
So, I guess can we formulate this all together with what we were talking about with the universal will and I guess the and magic and all that? Like, how does this all come together?
So, I think it comes to this kind of existential view that I think really comes about at the end of the Second World War. in light of the mass destruction and decay of institutions that were upheld prior to the war as not the bastions of human freedom, but the only real possibility for any human freedom whatsoever. And when these begin to decline, the existentialists totally lose faith in them and instead turn to subjective self-reflection as the only genuine means to freedom in the world. And so then freedom becomes a choice. In someone like Sartre, one must affirm one's own freedom. In Martin Heidegger, it is what he calls thrownness, and one throws oneself into one's freedom because one is already thrown in the world. And so when one reflects on this and again chooses freedom, they become free. And then in Camus, it's a kind of affirmation of the absurd, and
Yes.
in Nietzsche, it's yes-saying and amor fati.
Yes.
But of course, Nietzsche's project is slightly different, so just he's kind of proto-existentialist in that way. But in any case, the late existentialist movement really is just, I think, a kind of selfish subjectivism. Of course, Sartre turns away from it and becomes a Marxist, but I don't know. The idea of hell as other people, for instance, or even if you read Marseille and his reflections in The Stranger, it's all very deprecating and self-loathing, and, you know, why are we in this world and what are we here for? And well, eventually we just throw our hands up and say, to hell with it all. You know, we have our own meaning, and that's that. And the rest of the world can pound eat. And that's the kind of sentiment I get here a little bit. And again, I think it's a very almost a depressing view, because the rest of the world is kind of just a little mirror to your own mind rather than an opportunity for engagement and social and collective action. So I don't know. I think as far as that goes, you know, existentialism is still a solution to deep and historic philosophical problems, and the problem of freedom and the freedom of the will being one of them. And
which relates back
existentialists,
to, I guess, rebelling against this quote-unquote universal will, right?
Exactly, that's what I was just about to say. Insofar as the existentialists are after a solution to that problem, and insofar as choice becomes, though the means to the resolution of the problem of the freedom of the will, we are all necessarily free, but only because we have chosen it. And so we kind of collapse the problem into nothing, because insofar as we have affirmed the choice in and of itself, and insofar as we make it self-reflexively and we meditate on it and make it intentionally and meaningfully, then and there is no problem. And there is no real metaphysics anymore, and there is no demiurge, and there is no God, and there is none of the anything really, no organized religion, there's nothing, just the I that wills and says, I am free. And as a problem, it's, you know, solved, but not, I would say, very satisfactorily, because you've gotten rid of any, again, possibility of collective human action. Society has kind of fallen apart, at least philosophically speaking. We've kind of committed a kind of philosophical genocide as opposed to Camus' philosophical suicide. So it's not an exactly useful solution, and so that's part of the reason it's kind of fallen out of favor ever since, because most of the problems of philosophy are social problems. They're problems of mutual intelligibility and action. And if all you have is the independent ego saying, I am free, then you don't have much of anything at all.
Yeah, but I guess, wasn't Asuka I thought Asuka was just saying he wanted to bring out a bunch of people to do a thing and help the world and, like, stop all these problems.
Well, that's the thing. It isn't quite clear to me whether he means that those numbers are motivated to action, because he said we don't need a call to action. He said all we need is the numbers. And if numbers are here construed as empty data and, you know, pieces of knowledge, then there is no motivation to action. There's just having this knowledge for some reason, for the contentment of knowing. And
I guess
suppose.
everyone that tried to motivate to action leads to genocide and conflict. So
right.
So it's a it's a positive view of human nature, but that's about it.
Yeah, no, I mean, there is an escape, so to say, but it's an escape into this, you know, privative contemplation. And that's also an ancient solution. Aristotle calls the highest form of activity contemplation on thought itself. And so Aristotle's God is just thought thinking on itself. It's called the unmoved mover. And the philosopher, and any human individual who attempts to attain to the status of philosopher, imitates the unmoved mover by sitting in quiet contemplation. And that is kind of the ultimate move of the existentialists, and it seems to be the move that's being made here too.
All right. Well, I might as you've not heard this. I'm not. I know I've told you I talked about this song, but I don't think I've played for you this song. Have you listened to this song before or no?
What's the song?
The Gravity.
I don't think so.
All right. Well, this is the song that is the most
Okay.
popular thing on my channel that launched me. So, like so I might as well. This is the existentialist rock anthem as I talked about. So I'll just play it. I can play. You can tell me to stop, or I can just play it through, and get your reaction to it as a fellow philosopher. And I guess this might be able to show this guy's. I don't know how much it actually relates. Well, it does relate to his worldview, but we'll see. No, we're gonna continue. We're gonna finish this, but what do you think so far?
No, I mean, aside from the lyrics, I think it's very interesting how both the music and both the actions and the dress of the main character, Asuka himself, they're all very clearly patterned on Roman Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's just fascinating how in other cultures, these kind of Western signifiers become recombined into something that is, quite frankly, alien to any Westerner. I mean, there's no way a French person could have come up with this and so totally, shaken up Catholic signifiers in a bottle, so to say, and poured them all out and rearranged them anew. I think it's so fascinating.
I guess, and then what about the music? I forget that you are also an expert on music.
Yeah, no, I mean the music is extremely interesting. It's almost math rock like. Again, the
math
moments
rock,
of,
interesting.
Yeah, or something similar.
I mean, math rock would make sense. This guy is the math guy, so
right. The kind of a deep bass is what I'm thinking about, and the mixture of rhythms I think is also there. As for the lyrics, I think they're as you pointed already to existentialist certainly, and certainly poking at the main themes of the series as I understand it. It's very, very thought-provoking.
you say that's a eternal recurrence reference?
Yeah, no, I mean it's also a very blatant Christian reference. You know, the Alpha and the Omega. Um, also, I mean, there's an idea in all forms of mysticism, but especially Christian mysticism, the idea of procession and return. Also, the idea of a circle. You know, the circle has no beginning and end, so any beginning point is also the end because it'll always loop back around. In Latin, procession and return are called exitus and reditus. You know, you proceed out and you return back to God, and this is the idea of reincarnation as well. You know, there's no one clean beginning point for Atman relative to Brahman because Brahman is through all of the Atman.
Yeah, I mean, a very, very Hindu. I mean, that's a clear eternal recurrence in Hinduism.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, all of these, so not just Nietzsche's idea, but all of these kind of cyclical ideas are certainly contained in this sort of phrase. Pause it quick. It's also
I wish
interesting
I wish an influence. Yeah, I actually don't think I point out that lyric. Like I just say, yeah, I wish an influence like this. As
Right.
if I'm like very Nietzschean, right? I mean, like the Christian morality.
Mm-hmm. It's also very
Which
interesting
is him reflecting upon what he acted as, right? As sort of that Nietzsche. That I guess that's sort of creating all these gears and I guess still, I don't know, but yeah, I mean, yeah. But what do you have to say about it?
No, I was just going to say it's interesting that this is called divine, that the act of imposing one's will on reality in this way is a divine act.
Yeah, because Nietzsche would say that's not divine, that's the anti-divine.
Exactly. So that I think is very interesting.
Is there anything else?
No, that's all I wanted to comment on.
Something
Yeah, so what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think it's very interesting. The one line that the answers are understood from retracing history, that's certainly quite Hegelian. And this idea of meaning having meaning, I think that's also, again, another very existentialist theme. But as far as this connects back to either the opening or what Asuka said later on, I don't know. I think this idea of achieving the best for mankind, this is kind of a different sort of thing from the project of simply understanding, for instance, the reality of truth or if meaning has meaning. I mean, these are not unrelated questions, but one is certainly more speculative than the other.
Yeah, no, I think that this actually illuminates what was I don't this actually illuminates what the hell he was talking about. But it's just, I just wanted to frankly show this because this is like all the songs in this game are very philosophical, but this one is like obviously like the philosophy song. Like it's blatantly just littered with philosophy references.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it clearly comes through.
Yeah, so I guess are you impressed?
Yeah, no, I think it's very interesting. I hadn't heard of this game immediately. I recognized one of the characters in the cutscene here, the one with the blue hoodie.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
But
and again, Asuka's not the main character of the series. He again is technically referred to the wiki as the antagonist of the series because he again did kind of cause all this. He just felt bad about through it the whole time.
right.
So
It's very interesting. I mean, it's like everything you've ever shown me. It's very rich in symbolism and illusion, and recombination of those illusions into something novel.
Mm-hmm.
So
I guess
yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I guess how do we bring this all together now? It's not much. It would take a lot more time to further explain to you a lot more, but you said that we had around only an hour, so we'll leave it with that. So I guess what do you make of of what I've been able to show you in this time?
Yeah, I mean, I think it is at the end of the day a very blatantly existentialist understanding of man's position in the world, reacting against conditions of unfreedom, and an attempt to affirm that whatever it is that gives us our freedom and our choicefulness in reality. So I think the institution of magic in the series certainly throws a wrench in that relative to our world because it heightens the stakes, so to say, of the question of unfreedom. That is, if we are bound to something, is it going to be a natural thing or a supernatural thing? And by heightening those stakes, you make the philosophical question thereby also a theological question, because the supernatural then, is it something that we ought to obey? Is it something we ought to get rid of our own freedom for the sake of obedience to?
Right, because again, remember that thing, the universal will wants to take away all impulses.
Exactly.
Which goes back to the whole me talking about how a lot of this could then relate to animality. You know, my whole deal.
Certainly. And in the end, then, I think the affirmation for this game is freedom and choice, in spite of emergent conditions of unfreedom.
So then, I guess the question is, what do you think that this game, the fact this game came out of Japan?
I mean, I think
a collectivist country.
Yeah, no, it's. I mean, there is no real affirmation of the individual freedom here, as opposed to the demands of a collectivity, and I think that shines forth in all of this. These are abstract claims about the possible freedom of a possible human actor, not the empirical human actor reacting against a society that compels him or her to do this or that. This is a very Enlightenment Western thought.
You are actually right. Even though it feels very individualist, it is very individualist. I mean, the guy says, I'm going to make sure that you live, that his girlfriend lives, so she doesn't have to sacrifice. So there's still some hardcore individual actions. There's also some nice. This game is probably the most pro LGBT I've seen of any game. Like there's a non-binary character and a trans character in this game. So that's nice.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fantastic. It's always good to see that kind of representation.
Yeah, so So,
But yeah,
but
yeah, I think on this note, I do have to get going because, like I said, I did have about an hour, so I have some other stuff I have to get done tonight.
But so I guess, well, any last words?
No, I mean, I think that thank you for showing me this. It's very interesting. It certainly makes me want to play the game. It's very interesting. I'm interested in how the plot develops throughout the whole game.
It's on. Well, it's a whole series, right? And also, I mean, the good thing is you can just watch all the stuff online because the game itself is just a fighting game. Yeah, I mean, watch Strive's story. At least watch Strive. You can start with the end. That's where most people I think have started because Strive is where it got the most popular. So yeah.
Yeah,
All
yeah, I'll
right.
definitely give it a look.
Well, we've converted one to one of us. Okay. Either way, thank you, Mr. Amazing. Thank you, Shae. You were awesome again. It was great to have you on.
Yeah.
I'm glad we were able to fit all this into around an hour. And hope you all like this. All right.
Yeah, thank you, David. Happy to be here, and yeah, hope I shared some
All right.
worthy information with your
Peace.
viewers.
Bye.
Later.